Everyone, I am Mohammad Anish Khan and I am iOS, Android and React Native engineer and I am also a machine learning researcher. So here I am posting the first video of React Native training series. This video is about React Native fundamentals and we are going to cover what is React and React Native, topics like React Native Architecture overview, React Native Application Architecture with Redux and comparison of React and React Native component. Before beginning, I would like to tell you that I am not a professional YouTuber, so bear with me if I commit any mistakes. So let's begin with the React Native. React Native. The React Native comes from React. React is a web-based JavaScript library. It is being used for web application and is being maintained by Facebook Instagram community. React Native. React Native is a framework. It's for building the mobile apps using JavaScript and React library. It uses the same design as React, letting you compose a rich mobile UI from declarative components. The React itself has a component architecture, means it has a component, states, props. Same things are being moved forward to React Native, where we can build the cross-platform applications, mobile applications. React Native uses the same fundamental UI building blocks as regular iOS and Android apps. Means the same UI architecture. Means if your spinner comes, it means the way the spinner comes in Android will have the native look and feel in Android, and way the spinner comes in iOS, it will have its native look and feel. So to understand the basic structure of React Native app, you need to understand the basic React concept like JSX, component, state and props. Means if you want to be a React Native engineer, that will try to be in this series, so we need to have a good command over React concepts like JSX, components, state and props. And let me tell you, in the coming videos we'll take a look into it and we'll try to grasp each and every concept. So let's see how the React Native application looks like. Before learning anything, we should know what we are going to design and how it may look like. See, this diagram gives you a good idea. Over here, when we talk about a cross-platform, so we just talk about the two major platforms like Android and iOS. So over here it shows that the tools like Xcode, the IDE for iOS application and Android Studio, that's device that was the tools level. What languages we used to use while making a native application of iOS, we use Swift and Objective-C, and while making Android we use Java and or we may use C or C++ for libraries. In middle of the native code and your final IPA, there is a React Native libraries and JavaScript code that we are going to use to make our cross-platform application. Means cross-platform, when I say cross-platform, it means we are going to code once and the same code will be running on iOS and Android. That is what called the React Native. That is what for the React Native is. So over here it shows that the final IPA, that IPA is the executable file for the iOS application, and .apk is a executable file for Android. So before giving out the final output, we have the React Native libraries and React.js. React.js, you can say either React.js or React, all means the same, and that means a JavaScript library. React is a JavaScript library, same like AngularJS and other JavaScript library. So in between we are going to bridge the platform UI components that may be native. We may be making use of some native UI component of the iOS or Android and some React Native UI component without increasing complexity. So let's move forward and we can discuss this diagram in future. Over here, see this application architecture. In this training session I am just giving you the architecture overview, how the application will look like, how the architecture will look like. Because when you will code, so the first thing that in mind that comes is how my application would look like. So over here this diagram gives you a good idea. Means you have some you code in, you will be having some of your code in iOS, some of your code in Android, and they will be React native code that will be bridging both of them, or there will be some part that will be completely in React native, and finally we'll be giving a two different output, that is one iOS and Android. And when you, and over here that is the React Native Application Architecture. In this we are trying, I'm trying to let you know how your internal project would function. So consider this as your project. You have a project, and so what will be the major component over here? See, it says this, the entire box on the left is your React Native part, and this is your Redux layer. And the first thing that might struck in your mind is what is Redux and where it has come into scene. Redux is a state management layer. Okay, just there are two type of state management layer in React Native. One is Redux and one is Flux. So this so whenever you are making a React Native application, you will be needing a state management application, or in future I will tell you what are its benefits. So let's see what this architecture let us know. It says, see, there's a container with some present component 1 2 3 everything. One more thing I want to let you know, everything in a React Native is component. You can just match the component like object, just like if you have done any object oriented programming language, you know object has its properties and its behavior. It has some properties, it has some behavior, same like component over here are just like objects, and component in the React Native context has a state. Means it has a state, you may get what I mean. It has a state, it has a props. Okay, in coming slides I will let you know what the state and props actually mean. Okay, so everything, as I told you, everything in the React Native will be a component. So there's a navigation component, UI component, a reusable component. Then we'll be try to bridge it with the native module Android. Native means the native code of Android and the native code of iOS. In case if the complexity of the application needs you to make use of iOS and Android native code, so over here we may do the bridging. Then there is a Redux layer that will try to handle the entire application state. You have made some, there is an event file that will tell to action to do some action, and it will ask, it will then asynchronous action will be taken. I hope this diagram may not be clear to you until unless you just write your application, but the main core idea behind showing you this diagram is you may get an idea about what your architecture should look like. It should have a Redux, it should be like it should flow in this manner. You have component divided, you have a bridging with the native code, events firing to Redux, and Redux is returning you the updated state. So let's move ahead, you will get to know more about Redux in coming slides. So React.js, in this slide let's see what is the relation between the React.js and the React Native. See, React, actually the component part, there was a React.js available and it has a component part. So it shows over here, see, there is a React Native component, and this diagram shows about React.js component. Now let's look into what are the component or building blocks for React Native application. In React, developer build the application using composable modular component. This component present the parts of the visual effect. Each component implement a render there are too much of the detailing given over here. So this screen will only be understandable to you when we will cover the upcoming topic. So let's skip that and come to the React Native component lifecycle. As every application has its lifecycle, so React Native component means an individual UI component that you see has its own lifecycle. And its lifecycle flow like component will mount, then render, then component did mount. Mount means present, okay, and did mount, it is visible. Then to wait for the props and state. As I told you, every component has a props and state, so they will be waiting for their new props. Props are their internal values, you can say their internal features, and state are these external values. Means you can consider the data. Props and data is a data sharing method. Components share internal data with the help of props and external data with the help of state. Means if you want one component to transfer the data to the other component, it will share that using state, and if the component wanna share the data within itself, it does it with the help of props. Okay, then you have a component will unmount. And okay, I should give you time to just visualize it and understand what this lifecycle is. Okay, so you can just pause the video and just go through the diagram of the React Native component lifecycle. So next is the props state. Yeah, in the React Native you will handle a lot. This means I'm just trying to make you aware about the fundamentals of the React Native. You will when I'm saying props, state, style, or the Redux, these are the words that you will hear a lot, and while doing React Native coding you will do these things a lot. Okay, you will be making. Okay, let me give you an example. Suppose you have an object, or you have a class of class, say car, and you will be having its properties that we will call props, like color, props color, its engine. Okay, these are two of its props. Now you can just modify the props internally, like you can have a color, a car of a red color, and the engine of some 5 piston or 10 piston, as you wish, if technology exists. And then the state will be like who owns this car. Okay, means if a car is owned by Mr. X, then X will be its state. Okay, means it is being owned by X. This is the owned state. There will be number of other state variables you can mention. So these are the kind of the way the components share the values within the component and outside the component. Within the component they use props, and outside the component they use state. And other fundamentals, let's see into the other fundamentals of the React Native. So you will be using a lot React Native library, then you will be using a lot Redux library, Redux persist, React navigation. React navigation is itself is a library for navigation bar. Style component you will be using, then dependency management, and then tools. Over here I'm going to tell you some of the tools, like for dependency management it shows like use yarn. Okay, but yeah, but we'll be using what, npm. That is we'll be using npm for node management. And at last I am going to tell you that what makes the React Native different from other framework. They were already existing some of the cross-platform frameworks like PhoneGap, Accelerator, Titanium, that uses just JavaScript to create an iOS app. But what is it that makes React Native different? In React Native, your code may be written in JavaScript, but your app UI is fully native. You know, when you will be making your first app and you will be running, you will be having a single code, and you will see it runs same on the both of the different screen. And but when you use like a button or the header, like in Android, you used to have a title on the left aligned, and in iOS we have used to have a header title on the center line, so it will be giving you a same native UI feel. Okay, that is one of the biggest advantage of the React Native. And second is, additionally, unlike Titanium, React Native introduces a novel, radical, highly functional approach to constructing a user interface. Your UI is simple, functional, and current of the current app state. Means in React everything is component based. There is so much splitting, and architecture is so much bifurcated. You can bifurcate, means if you want to make a button, you can just make it a component wise, means you can make a different component for you view, you can make a different component for its clicking function. You can bifurcate it all out, and you will be having a control on each and every minute action of your user. So these are some of the fundamentals. I know I may have made you a bit confused with lots of knowledge in a single first screen. All you need to remember is, let me just give you a overview. Just remember that React Native is a framework and React is a JavaScript library. So React is a JavaScript library, and that was being used for web application. And here comes your React Native. It's a framework. It is used for cross-platform application. Okay, since React Native is based on React, so it uses the component architecture for application design. So everything that you see on application built by React Native, everything, means if you see a button, then button is a component. If you see a text, then text is a component. So everything is a component, and component has two ways of sharing the information. First is props, and second is state. If the component want to share the information internally, it does it with props, and if the component want to share the information externally, then it does with state. Okay, so here was the architecture that I was making you understand. See, now if you review it, see, it shows first component, second component. It may be like there may be a button, list, spinner. Okay, a series of component. There is some bridging with the native code, and there is an event firing with the Redux. So Redux layer is a separate layer. When we'll be making an application, we'll be making a separate layer for the Redux or Flux. That is for state management. I know you will not be able to grasp it, state management, at this point, but but my purpose was to let you aware with this term Redux. Just remember, Redux is for state management of your app. Okay, so and next was React component lifecycle. Means just I told you React Native comes from React and it makes use of component architecture. So component has its lifecycle, means component will mount. These are some of the methods that you may use to render or to just change or perform some logic, like component will mount, render, component did mount, wait for state and props. So this is the lifecycle. You can the more you understand the lifecycle, the more easily you can manipulate and use it in your favor. Okay, and there were some of the libraries that I told you about: React, Redux, React navigation. Just remember it, just get familiar with these words, so that it doesn't seems to be new to you. And for dependency, over here it mentioned yarn. You can use yarn if you're familiar with it, but we are going to use npm. And for static type checking flow, for testing we may use jest or enzyme. For code formatting we may use prettier, and for the component style we may use storybook. And we'll see whatever the best. Since React Native is open source, there are lots of libraries available to help you out. And at last I told you about some of the existing cross-platform application and how React Native is best. Since in React Native the UI that you get fully native UI, which was not possible in PhoneGap and other. And moreover, React Native is component based, so its architecture is very bifurcated. So that's all for the first video. In next video we'll make our first React Native application. Thank you.